My girlfriend texted, "I'm putting your house in my name. My mother said it's fair." I replied, "I'll think about it." Then I changed the locks and left her suitcases on the porch, her screaming fit when she couldn't get in. This whole shit show started 6 months ago when Caroline moved in with me. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was assuming that someone you've dated for a year has the same understanding of boundaries and property rights as a normal human being. I own my house. Nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom ranch I bought 5 years ago when the market was decent. I've put a lot of work into it, refinished the hardwood floors, updated the kitchen, built a deck out back. It's not a mansion, but it's mine, free and clear. My grandpa left me enough to make a solid down payment, and I've busted my ass to pay off the mortgage early. Caroline and I met at a mutual friend's barbecue. She was funny, outgoing, gorgeous, and seemed down to earth. The first 6 months were great. She practically lived at my place anyway, so when her lease was up, it made sense for her to move in. We agreed she'd pay a third of the utilities and buy groceries instead of rent, since I owned the place outright. Seemed fair to both of us at the time. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. She'd forget to pay her share of utilities. Groceries became my responsibility more often than not because she was low on funds despite having a decent job as a dental hygienist. She bought expensive crap for the house without consulting me. Throw pillows that cost more than my car payment, some weird art piece that looked like a drunk toddler made it. When I questioned any of this, I got the silent treatment or tears. But man, nothing could have prepared me for yesterday. I'm at work, buried in spreadsheets, when my phone buzzes. Text from Caroline. "Just talked to my mom, and we think it's best if we put the house in my name too. Since we're practically married anyway, she says it's only fair since I'm investing in our life together." I nearly choked on my coffee. Investing? The woman hasn't paid utilities in 3 months and thinks Target throw pillows are an investment. And practically married? We've never even discussed marriage. I read the text 3 more times, thinking maybe it's a joke. Nope. She followed up with, "Mom's friend is a lawyer and can draw up the paperwork this week." So exciting. I sat there dumbfounded for a good 5 minutes. Then I responded with, "I'll think about it," which was generous because what I was actually thinking couldn't be printed on a family website. I called my buddy Mike, who's a real estate attorney. Put him on speaker while I drove home early. "She wants you to put her name on your house?" He laughed so hard I had to hold the phone away from my ear. After 6 months? And she's contributing nothing? Buddy, this is what we call a giant red flag factory. So legally, she has no claim, right? Not unless you've made some verbal promise or she's been contributing substantially to the mortgage, which it sounds like she hasn't. No, not a dime. Then tell her to pound sand, but do it carefully. In most states, if she's been receiving mail there, she's established residency. You'd typically need to formally evict her if she doesn't leave willingly. Even though she's never paid rent, we never signed a lease or anything. That's actually in your favor here in Texas, Mike said. Since you never had a formal rental agreement and she never paid rent, she's legally considered a licensee or guest rather than a tenant. Makes things easier. Still, document everything and do this by the book. By the time I got home, I had a plan. Caroline wouldn't be back for hours. Thursday was her nail appointment, followed by drinks with the girls, which meant she'd roll in around 7 or 8. First, I went through the house gathering her important stuff. Documents, jewelry, expensive electronics, etc. Packed them carefully in boxes. Then I got her suitcases from the garage and packed essential clothes and toiletries, enough to live on for a couple weeks. Next, I called a locksmith. Explained the situation, and the guy was surprisingly understanding. "Happens more than you'd think," he said, switching out all my locks within an hour. While he was working, I photographed every room in the house to document conditions. I also dug up our text conversations about the living arrangement to prove no promises were made about ownership. I contacted my security company to change the access code and remove her from the authorized persons list. Then I called my neighbor Chuck, a recently retired cop who's been a solid friend since I moved in. "Hey, might have a situation tonight. Ex-girlfriend might cause a scene when she realizes she's being kicked out." Need me to hang around? He offered. If you don't mind. Just want a witness in case things go sideways. Not asking you to intervene officially or anything. I know you're retired. Just having you visible might help keep things from escalating. No problem. I'll be around. If things get out of hand, I'll call the on-duty guys. By 6:30, everything was set. Her suitcases and boxes were neatly arranged on the covered porch. I'd left her a civil note explaining that our relationship was over, her things were packed, and she had 2 weeks to arrange pickup of any remaining items. I included Mike's contact info for any legal questions and a check covering her portion of the utilities for the next month as a gesture of good faith. Then I retreated to my backyard shed with a cooler of beer, a comfortable lawn chair, and my phone to record whatever might happen. At 7:42 p.m., the show began. I heard her car pull up, the car door slam, then footsteps on the porch and the sound of keys jingling, followed by confusion when the key wouldn't work. What the hell? More key jiggling, then pounding on the door. Mark, open the door. My key isn't working. Silence as she presumably saw her suitcases. Then, the unmistakable sound of someone reading a note and absolutely losing their shit. Are you fucking kidding me? The pounding intensified. Open the goddamn door right now. I stayed silent in my shed, recording everything. Chuck had positioned himself casually on his front porch across the street, pretending to read while keeping an eye on things. The phone calls started next. I let them go to voicemail, which apparently enraged her further. I know you're in there. You can't do this to me. This is my house too. That's when she started circling the house, trying every door and window. When she reached the backyard, I got a front row seat to the meltdown through the shed window. She was still in her going out clothes, tight dress, heels she could barely walk in, stomping around my yard like a T-Rex in a tea party, screeching into her phone. Mom, he changed the locks. He put all my stuff outside. He can't do this. It's illegal. Pause while her mom presumably spoke. I don't care what he can legally do. Tell your lawyer friend to sue him. She tried the sliding glass door, peering inside and screaming my name. Then she spotted me in the shed. Our eyes met through the window. For a brief moment, there was stunned silence. Then, why are you hiding in the shed like a psycho? I held up my phone to indicate I was recording, took a calm sip of my beer, and said nothing. This sent her into orbit. She charged the shed like a rhino, forgetting about her impractical footwear, and face-planted spectacularly into the grass halfway there. The string of obscenities that followed would make a sailor blush. By now, other neighbors were peering out windows or stepping onto porches. Caroline noticed the audience and tried a different approach. Help! Someone help me! He's abusing me! He threw me out with nowhere to go. That's when Chuck casually walked over from his porch. Evening, folks, everything okay here? He asked, making it clear he was speaking as a concerned neighbor, not in any official capacity. No, he locked me out of my house. She jabbed a finger toward me. Your house? Chuck asked innocently. Your name's on the deed? Well, no, but I live here. Mark, this true? Chuck called to me. I emerged from the shed, phone still recording. She's been staying with me, but the house is solely in my name. I've asked her to leave and packed her essentials. I handed Chuck a copy of the note I'd left her. He read it and nodded. Seems reasonable. Ma'am, I suggest you gather your things and come back for the rest later when things have cooled down. This is bullshit. My mom's lawyer will destroy you both. Chuck sighed, the deep sigh of someone who's seen this drama 1,000 times. Ma'am, you're creating a disturbance. If this continues, someone's likely to call the actual police, and that won't help anyone. Something in his tone must have finally penetrated her rage bubble. She glared at both of us, then stomped back to the front yard, struggling with her suitcases while still cursing. I'll be back with my lawyer. Enjoy your little power trip while it lasts. She shoved everything into her car with surprising strength, then peeled out of my driveway, nearly taking out my mailbox in the process. Chuck turned to me. You okay, buddy? Yeah, thanks for the backup. No problem. Document everything, just in case, but you're following the proper steps for someone who is a non-paying guest in your home. That was last night. I slept like a baby for the first time in months. This morning, the text barrage started, alternating between threats and tearful pleas. You're going to regret this. Mom's lawyer says I have squatters' rights. Please, baby, I'm sorry. I just thought it would make us more official. Please let me come home. My name deserves to be on that house after everything I've done for you. I miss you so much. The girls say I should give you space, but I know we can work this out. I haven't responded to any of them. Instead, I forwarded everything to Mike, who confirmed what I already suspected. She has absolutely zero claim to my house. The squatters' rights comment gave us both a good laugh. Her mother has been feeding her nonsense about adverse possession, Mike explained. That requires someone to openly occupy property without permission for years. In Texas, it's 10 years minimum, and you've obviously never abandoned the property or given her permission to claim ownership. Mike also explained that her mother's misconceptions about common law marriage and cohabitation rights were completely off base for Texas law. Common law requires you to present yourselves as married, which you never did, and cohabitation alone creates zero property rights here. Around noon, the flying monkeys descended. First, her sister called, telling me I was a heartless monster for putting Caroline out with nowhere to go. I reminded her that Caroline has a mother, a sister, and plenty of friends she could stay with. Not to mention the $15,000 in her savings account that she bragged about just last week while explaining why she deserved a vacation I should pay for. Then her best friend Tiffany showed up unannounced. She's devastated, Tiffany said when I answered the door but didn't invite her in. She's devastated that her plan to take my house didn't work, I corrected. It wasn't like that, she just wanted security. Security would be contributing to bills, building her own assets, or discussing a future together like adults, not trying to steal my biggest asset after 6 months of living rent-free. You're twisting everything. She loves this house. She loves that it's paid off, and she wouldn't have a mortgage. There's a difference. Tiffany huffed. Well, she needs the rest of her stuff. She can arrange a time with my attorney to pick it up. I'll need 24 hours notice. This isn't a legal proceeding. This is a relationship. Was a relationship. Now it's a legal proceeding because she threatened to take my house and won't accept that it's over. Tiffany eventually left, but not before informing me that all our friends think I'm a massive asshole. Considering all our friends are primarily her friends who I tolerated, I'm not losing sleep over it. The rest of the day brought more flying monkeys. Her mother called, switching between threats and attempts to explain that Caroline just doesn't understand how property ownership works and was just trying to build a future. I let her talk herself out, then calmly explained that any further communication should go through Mike. A lawyer? Really? That's how you want to handle this? She sputtered. Caroline wanted to involve lawyers first, I reminded her. Something about your friend drawing up paperwork? That shut her up. By evening, a new tactic, Caroline's dad called. We'd met exactly twice, and he seemed like a decent guy trapped in a family of entitled women. Mark, I want to apologize for the situation, he began, sounding genuinely embarrassed. I've explained to Caroline that what she asked for was completely inappropriate. I appreciate that. She's staying with us for now. If it's all right, I'd like to come by this weekend to pick up the rest of her things. I'll make sure she's not with me. Finally, a reasonable human being. We arranged a time, and I thanked him for being the adult in the room. Between you and me, he added quietly, she gets this from her mother. I've spent 30 years trying to correct this kind of thinking without success. You made the right call getting out now. That conversation was oddly reassuring. At least someone in her family lives in reality. It's been 3 days now. Caroline's dad came by as promised and cleared out the rest of her things. He was efficient and respectful, even helping me move my coffee table back to where it was before Caroline decided it had bad energy in that spot. She won't be bothering you again, he assured me. I've made it very clear that any further harassment will result in consequences she won't like. I didn't ask what those consequences were, but the man had the weary determination of someone who's had to clean up family messes before. True to his word, the direct communications from Caroline stopped. The flying monkeys retreated. Even her social media tirade, in which I was portrayed as an abusive monster who tricked her into giving up her apartment, then cruelly discarded her. petered out when her own friends started questioning her version of events. Apparently, Tiffany has a big mouth, and Caroline's demand to be added to my house deed spread through their friend group like wildfire. Even in a group of women who largely took her side by default, that was a bridge too far for many. Questions began appearing in the comments. Wait, you wanted him to give you half his house after 6 months? Didn't you say last month that you weren't ready for marriage yet? How much were you contributing to the mortgage? She deleted the posts soon after. The aftermath has been surprisingly peaceful. I've spent the week reclaiming my space. The ridiculous throw pillows are gone. The abstract monstrosity she called art has been replaced with the vintage movie posters I had before. The guest room she converted into her home office, which she used exactly twice, is now my gaming room again. My utility bills have mysteriously dropped by 40%. Turns out Caroline took hour-long showers, left every light in the house on, and set the thermostat to tropical rainforest levels when I wasn't looking. Friends who had gradually fallen away during our relationship have started coming around again. Apparently, Caroline had been subtly discouraging these friendships for months. Mark's too tired, she'd tell them when they called to make plans. Mark doesn't really like that restaurant, she'd say when they suggested dinner. Last night, my buddy Dave came over for beers and straight up told me, "Man, we were worried about you. She had stage 5 clinger written all over her from day one." "Why didn't you say something?" I asked. "We tried. Remember when Tony made that joke about her rearranging your furniture the first month you dated? You defended her, said she had an eye for design or some crap." I did remember, and several similar conversations I dismissed. "Love makes you stupid," I admitted. "The stupidest," Dave agreed. "Remember Jenny? The girl who slashed your tires when you wouldn't buy her a Valentine's Day Rolex after dating for 3 weeks? Exactly. We all get at least one psycho. It's like a tax on dating." Maybe he's right. Maybe this was just my turn to pay the crazy tax. The good news is, it could have been much worse. If I hadn't shut this down immediately, who knows how far it would have gone? The biggest lesson from all this? When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Caroline showed me her entitlement in 100 small ways before the house demand. I just wasn't paying attention. Last piece of the saga. Yesterday, I received a certified letter from an actual attorney, not just her mother's lawyer friend. It stated that Miss Caroline Johnson has no claim or interest in the property at my address, acknowledges she was simply a guest in my home, and will cease all attempts at contact. Furthermore, any property left behind is considered abandoned. I was confused until I saw the letterhead. The attorney works at the same firm as Caroline's father. Seems like Dad was serious about handling the situation. I poured myself a celebratory whiskey and deleted Caroline's number from my phone. Cost of this experience, 6 months of my life, about $1,200 in utilities she never paid, and one very awkward conversation with my elderly neighbor, who overheard some of Caroline's more colorful language during her lawn meltdown. Worth it? Absolutely. Because the alternative was coming home one day to find my house in someone else's name and a lifetime of trying to fix that particular nightmare. So here's to dodging bullets, changing locks, and the wonderful clarity that comes from watching someone who wants to take everything you've worked for, faceplant spectacularly into your freshly fertilized lawn. Update. It's been 2 weeks since the lockout meltdown, and I thought everything was finally settling down. Boy, was I wrong. Yesterday, I'm at work when my phone starts blowing up. Texts from neighbors, calls from Chuck, even a message from Caroline's dad. Apparently, Caroline decided that if she couldn't have my house, nobody should. She showed up in the middle of the day with 2 friends and a rented moving truck. Their brilliant plan? To take back what's hers while I was at work. What Caroline failed to consider. 1. I installed security cameras after the lockout. 2. Mrs. Peterson across the street is 78, retired, and watches my house like it's her full-time job. 3. 3 women trying to break into a house in broad daylight tend to attract attention. Mrs. Peterson called Chuck immediately. Those girls are trying to jimmy the back door with a credit card. Like they've seen in the movies, but they're doing it all wrong. Chuck called the police, then headed over himself as a concerned neighbor. He arrived just as they'd given up on the credit card method and were considering breaking a window. Caroline's defense? I left some things inside that he's refusing to return. Problem with that story. Her dad had meticulously inventoried and removed every last bobby pin during his supervised visit. We'd even taken photos of the empty closets and drawers as proof. The police detained all 3 women. Caroline was screaming that it was her house too, she had rights, etc. Her friends looked less certain, especially when informed they could be charged as accomplices to attempted breaking and entering. When the officers asked if I wanted to press charges, I consulted with Mike. He explained that while I could be a complaining witness, ultimately the prosecutor would decide whether to pursue charges based on the evidence and witness statements. After Caroline's father arrived, summoned by Chuck, and promised to get her into therapy, I told the officers I didn't want to pursue charges against Caroline. Her friends weren't so lucky. Both had outstanding warrants for unpaid parking tickets, so they got a free ride to the station anyway. The cherry on top of this disaster Sunday? Caroline had told her friends I was her fiancé who'd cruelly broken our engagement when she got pregnant. Neither the engagement nor the pregnancy were remotely true. But it explained why these women were willing to risk criminal charges to help her reclaim her stuff. Caroline's dad looked 10 years older as he explained this to me over the phone later. "I've made an appointment with a psychiatrist," he said warily. "This isn't just entitlement anymore. The lying has gotten pathological." I almost felt bad for the guy. Almost. Last night, I had a locksmith come again to change the locks. Not because I thought she still had keys, but because who knows what copies she might have made before the first change. I upgraded my security system, added motion sensors, and finally scheduled that privacy fence installation I've been putting off. The kicker to all this? One of Caroline's friends called me after making bail. Apparently, once they were in custody and reality set in, Caroline blamed them entirely for the break-in idea. She said it was all our plan, and she was just going along with it because she's fragile right now, the friend explained, sounding betrayed. She wanted to know if I'd make a statement clarifying they were there at Caroline's request. I directed her to Chuck, who had witnessed the whole scene, and suggested she talk to the responding officers who had body cam footage of Caroline directing operations like a deranged general. I've decided to take a break from dating for a while. Maybe learn a new hobby. Something peaceful, away from drama, maybe bird watching, from inside my newly fortified house. You know what they say, locks, cameras, and a good lawyer. The 3 essentials for surviving a breakup with someone who thinks your house should be their consolation prize.